What's up, everybody? Eric here from That's Wrestling. Thanks for tuning in, joining me on YouTube, downloading the podcast, however you are listening. If you are listening to this as a podcast, just want to let you know, head over to YouTube, check out the That's Wrestling channel. Subscribe to that channel because I do all these shows live, so if you want to hang out in the chat and ask questions or anything like that, that would be great. Also, the link is in the description of the show notes as well, so you can check that out if you are watching this over on YouTube and you'd like to get this to listen to on your way to work or something like that. It is available on podcasts and all your favorite podcast apps. If you cannot find it on your various podcast apps, shoot me an email, eric@thatswrestling.com, and I will look into that and see if I can get it added to that particular app, but it should be on. It's on a lot. I know it's available on at least 30 different platforms, probably more. It's also available on iTunes, like everybody pretty much at this point. If you cannot find it still in your app, head over to thatswrestling.com and you can pick up the RSS feed directly from there to paste into your app. But I would like to know if you can't get it on your app, if you're watching this on YouTube, because I would like to at least get that added if I can. Also, I am looking for a co-host. If anybody is interested in being a co-host with me on either AEW or New Japan, or if you want to do both, or if you just want to be as a fill-in or anything like that, shoot me an email, eric@thatswrestling.com, and I believe that is pretty much it. Oh yeah, be sure to leave a review, like and subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube, and let's get to it. There is a lot of news before I even get to the review for this week. The let's see, YouTube doesn't like specific words, so the particular thing that is going around and causing things to be canceled has been wreaking havoc on all types of shows all around the country, and it seems like so we have ROH has canceled their 18th anniversary show. There have been mumblings that tomorrow night's SmackDown is going to be moved to the Performance Center, and that's going to be canceled. The AEW Blood and Guts at the Prudential Center is going to have to be moved because they can't do it in the Prudential Center anymore, so I don't know if they're just going to postpone it or just move it completely or what's going to happen. It sounds like next week's AEW that was going to be in Rochester is also going to be canceled, or something is going to happen with it. I am not sure. They have not really announced what they're going to do. But yeah, it is completely unknown when we are going to have these shows or what they're going to do for the shows. It is all up in the air, and it is pretty crazy. I saw earlier that Disneyland is closing down. Of course, we have all the travel bans now going over to Europe, and obviously that puts into jeopardy. Obviously, we got WrestleMania. That's obviously going to be impacted. Let me check this. It looks like there is a statement there from WWE. It looks like they're still committed to hosting WrestleMania on Sunday, April 5th, but we're working on contingency plans if the event is canceled by government officials. But again, who knows? So everything is getting closed down. A lot of places are closing stuff down for a minimum of 30 days. So that would definitely run into that if the Tampa area decides to shut down those type of things. I mean, we have Washington doing all that. Washington State, we have stuff closed down if it's more than 250 people, and you have to get all of this stuff to be able to hold large gatherings. So everything is up in the air at the moment, and it's kind of annoying because I got tickets to AEW in Boston on April, I don't know what the date is, 15th or something like that. Let me check here. I know it's April, but I don't remember the exact day. Yeah, April 15th, so that's less than 30. Oh, that's just over 30 days away from now, so let's see how that goes. Right now, Boston is not a hot spot. But that could obviously change within the next 30 days. It could change within the next couple days. There has been a little bit of a pop near me. The local high school was closed today. I don't know if they're going to be closed tomorrow as well, but there is a local high school student that was suspected of having what we're dealing with. So, man, it is going to be interesting. WWE has confirmed that. So I'm reading right now that they're confirmed that the Detroit show on SmackDown will be moved to the Performance Center. So that is what's going to happen for Friday Night SmackDown. That is going to be very interesting to see SmackDown in the Performance Center with only essential personnel in attendance. That is going to be very strange. What AEW is going to do, again, like I said, they have not mentioned anything. I also have to talk about New Japan. New Japan has canceled the rest of their March dates as well, so we lose the entire New Japan Cup. I doubt they're going to redo it. I doubt they're going to schedule it at any point. Well, maybe they could do it through the summer or something like that, because they had moved the G1 because of the Olympics. But of course, now who the heck knows? Because the Olympics are supposed to be in Japan this year, I believe, right? And that's who knows what that's going to be. If they're suggesting that possibly this might all die out it might be heat affected, just like the flu tends to do, where by the summer months it tends to taper off a bit. But we will see. Obviously, we do not know. So this is really turning obviously the whole world upside down, but the wrestling world, definitely tons and tons of indie shows have been canceled. And of course, if WrestleMania doesn't happen or they have to shut down all those things, all the shows around the Tampa area where all these other promotions are going to be in the area running shows that weekend. I mean, this puts a huge damper on a ton of the business, because if nobody can get paid in the next couple months because they can't run any shows, that is going to be problematic for a lot of places. I keep moving on to different tangents. So now let's talk about AEW, some things that we could possibly see. Obviously, they could move the shows to smaller venues and just make some sort of little small shows, but there's also the possibility of doing some highlight shows or something like that. Or, they have lots of dark footage. So if they could pull some like the best of the matches of AEW Dark for, since October, and put those up on TNT in place of Dynamite for a couple weeks. I mean, they have footage. Obviously, they have pay-per-view stuff from last year, so maybe they could show matches from Double or Nothing, Fyter Fest, anything like that. They could put those up in place for a while. But wow, I just don't know. And there's nothing's come out because they just barely announced all these cancellations earlier this afternoon. And Evolve is postponed, and even the Fast and Furious 9, they're pushing that back an entire year. So that was supposed to come out, and they're pushing it back an entire year to next April. So we've got WXW, WrestleMania week is going to be canceled. And let's talk about the ratings real quick. AEW had been doing pretty good the past, basically all this year. They've been up around 900,000 on average. They were just shy of 900,000, I believe. This week got hit pretty hard because Trump had a address right at 9 o'clock, so right smack dab in the middle of Dynamite. And there was, I haven't seen the quarters. They haven't, let me see if anything about the quarters is up here. No, but AEW is down to 766, down from 906,000 last week. NXT actually did not lose as many. They were down 21,000 comparatively to last week at 697. So both shows got hit pretty hard. Obviously, NXT not as bad. And yeah, we will have to see how it goes going forward or what they're going to do. And yeah, we'll go from there. All right, so let's actually talk about the show that you were here to discuss. And actually, I'm just going to keep pushing this off. Let's talk about AEW Dark and Being the Elite and Free the Delete. So we have all types of the shoulder content. I watched all of it this week because it was very interesting. Last week we had Matt Hardy having his video and the Young Bucks showing up right at the end. If you have not watched it, go check it out. They're short. It's like 3.5 minutes. Same with this week's. It's 4 minutes, something like that. But basically, the Young Bucks end up burying Matt Hardy alive in a grave. They're, of course, confused about it. This plays over to Being the Elite, where Matt is kind of having flashbacks about what happened during that. And then we will see how that plays out with Matt Hardy going forward. Of course, he has said that he is not committed to anywhere, but I assume with the Young Bucks being involved that he's pretty sure that he's going to AEW, I would think at least, so we'll be on the lookout for that. We had AEW Dark, we had Jurassic Express versus Kip Sabian and Peter Avalon, so this is actually Luchasaurus and Jungle Boy were facing Kip Sabian and Peter Avalon. It was a decent match. Jurassic Express actually picked up the win here with, it was this assisted cutter type of thing. Like Luchasaurus would get the guy up in a tombstone position and then whip him up. So he'd be, parallel with the ground, and Jungle Boy would hit that into a cutter. So I don't know if they have a name for that yet, but that is what they use for a finishing move. Next up, we had some jobber against Jimmy Havoc. Doesn't really matter. The jobber got way too much offense in on Jimmy Havoc. What happened after the match was Luther attacked him after the match, and I believe they've had a bit of a thing going. I have not watched the past couple weeks of Dark, so I'm not 100% sure on the storyline, but I am pretty sure that these two have been having issues with each other going back at least a couple weeks, so this is probably moving towards some sort of hardcore match because that is both of their type of deals. Next up, we had Hikaru Shida versus Abaddon. This was very interesting. If you have not seen it, Abaddon looks like a zombie. She is very strange. I wrote down some weird zombie chick. It was a decent match. Hikaru Shida kind of played scared in a few parts, and then she kind of gained some confidence on later, and she ended up picking up the victory in the end. It was a decent match. I think Abaddon is probably a decent wrestler. It's the gimmick just kind of overshadowed anything that I saw. Hikaru Shida looked really good in this match. She really laid in her strikes and everything like that. So, it kind of, what she was doing really kind of cemented stuff for me that, Hikaru Shida is probably the best women's wrestler they have currently. And it's just that the opponents that she works with end up making a lot of the mistakes. And what she does usually looks pretty good. Then we had Private Party versus Brandon Cutler and Sonny Kiss. Can Isaiah Cassidy please stop screaming? Why does he have to scream like a little bitch? It is so damn annoying, and I don't want to hear it anymore. Anyways, Private Party pick up the win in this one. Then Death Triangle beat up everyone after the match, so they are laying waste everywhere. And that was it for AEW Dark. Now we are finally on to, how far are we in here? 16 minutes? AEW Dynamite, March 11th, 2020. We had a recap from last week, and then we go straight to Adam Page with Tony Schiavone. Tony asks who his partner is going to be. The Young Bucks are there as well. Page says that he needs somebody he knows and trusts, and then he says that he wouldn't tag with Matt Jackson if he was the last person on Earth. Suggests that he wants Nick, but then says that it's going to be a mystery. Matt says to Nick, like, I hope you're not actually considering tagging with that prick. And they walk off. That is the end of that segment. So a mystery on who the partner is going to be, and continuing on, Matt and Hangman's fractured relationship at this point continues on. First match of the night is Ortiz versus Cody. Of course, Santana accompanies Ortiz down to the ring, and Brandy and Arn accompany Cody down. And the match starts, it's fine, and well, it looks like Lance Archer is Jake's client. They come out through the crowd and sit up in the front row doing a little scouting. Very interesting that they decided to go Jake with Lance Archer. I don't know if something must have happened. I don't really think Lance Archer needs a mouthpiece. I think he can do just fine on his own. But given that he is not as well known in the US versus, say, somebody like Brody Lee, I was expecting Brody Lee to be paired up with Jake the Snake just so he can have a mouthpiece, but it does make sense. Lance Archer isn't as well known in the US, and of course Brody Lee, the former Luke Harper, or whatever Brody Lee is going to be named when he manages to hit the circuit, is obviously well known because he's been on WWE for many years at this point. So I guess that does kind of make sense. Also, they could still pair up him with Jake and have some sort of stable where Jake is kind of the leader or head coach of that stable, which would be a perfectly fine thing to do as well. Bit of a back and forth. Of course, Ortiz distracts the ref, and Santana takes advantage on the outside, hitting him with the mad ball at one point. At another point, Santana actually gets involved. He's holding Cody when Cody goes up to the top rope. Brandy comes over, hits him in the back with her own belt, so she gets a little bit of a shot in on him. Cody dives on Santana on the outside while Santana is arguing with Arn at one point, then catches Ortiz when he's going for a dive, gives him a face buster on the ramp. But this really made absolutely no sense because they got right back into the ring and Ortiz was fine. It's like, you just gave the dude a face buster on the ramp, and like 2 seconds later, he's completely fine in the ring. Ortiz blocks a Cody cutter. Cody hits Ortiz with a dragon screw leg whip with his leg tied up in the ropes. So he starts working over the leg at this point, and then something I have not seen in a very, very long time, somebody taps out to the figure 4 leg lock, and Cody picks up the win there. Of course, right after the match ends, Santana comes in and starts attacking Cody. This is an ongoing thing with them. The Inner Circle seems to do this after every match at this point. They continue their beatdowns after matches. Arn gets in the ring, and then Matt runs down for the save, and he gets beaten down, and then Omega gets beaten down, or actually no, they both run down. Sorry, and I'm jumping ahead of here. Matt and Omega run down as well to protect Cody. Jericho shows up on screen, says he's going to beat the hell out of you pumpkinhead dipshits, and then he says to Matt, "Hey, where's your brother?" "Oh, I know where he is. He's right here." And then they show Nick Jackson is stuck under one of those overhead garage doors. It's crushing down on his head. There's blood coming out of his mouth. So one thing that really took me out right here. So is the cameraman just standing there filming Jericho with Nick's head stuck under the door? Like, the cameraman thinks that filming Jericho is the more important thing right here, where you have the dude literally like 5 feet away from you getting crushed underneath the door and bleeding. I was talking to somebody online about this same thing right as it happened. I'm like, why didn't they needed to have Jericho threaten the cameraman, Like, the cameraman should have started to drift down and Jericho, like, yell at him or threaten him or something. Then it would make way more sense why there's a cameraman filming Jericho, but Nick Jackson is stuck under this door right there. That is just one thing that I just did not like. It's like, oh, that was a little bit fourth wall breaking. The cameraman was right there. He should have been like, this guy stuck under the door and bleeding is probably more important to show. Jericho needed to threaten him in some way. There needed to be some sort of altercation between Jericho and the cameraman to give this a little bit more credibility of why the cameraman would just stand there with Nick Jackson being stuck under the door. Then they show throughout the commercial break, I don't know if this was in picture-in-picture I was watching on Fight, they load up Nick into a ambulance and they drive off. A few of the guys from the Elite jump into a car to follow the ambulance out as well. They give us the rundown of the card for the evening, which they do every week at this point, so good for them staying on this. Big fan of it. We have Jurassic Express versus Butcher Blade and MJF. We have Death Triangle versus Private Party and Joey Janela, and then Hangman Page and his mystery partner versus Jericho and Sammy. But next up, we have Hikaru Shida and Kris Statlander versus Nyla Rose and B. Priestley. This was a decent match. It was the crowd was a little quiet for it. They seemed to kind of wake up a little bit later on, but there were a few little botch spots here and there. But all in all, it looked a lot better than some of the women's matches lately. Statlander hits this really nice running knee at one point and then a Falcon Arrow on B for a 2 count. Shida and Statlander hit a combo super kick running knee on Nyla Rose, but that was only like a 2 count. I really like that. If they were a tag team, that could totally be their finisher. But, of course, Nyla Rose kicked out of it, so I guess it can't be much of a finisher. But it was very similar to like how they combined Hangman's buckshot lariat with Kenny Omega's V-trigger to the back. This was basically Nyla Rose was sitting down, and Kris Statlander gives her a super kick to the front of the face, and Hikaru Shida gave her a running knee to the back of the head. That would have been a great finish to this match, but, of course, it did not. In the end, Nyla Rose hits a spear on Hikaru Shida and then a Beast Bomb to pick up the win. So Nyla Rose has pinned the number 1 contender to the Women's Championship. This was a little clunky at the end because Kris Statlander was not taken out of the match. And in fact, she was still actually in the ring. She was down, but she just, and the camera angle picked her up, that she was just watching this all happen and did not break up the pin. Probably could have gone a little, at least have taken her out some way where she would have fallen to the floor or something like that. Would have made this finish a lot better. Next up we have, which was one of my favorite segments of the evening, Christopher Daniels is making a mock Dark Order infomercial. He is standing in front of a green screen. He has the nice landscape background in the back, and he's talking about how the Dark Order had this momentum when they came into AEW, and they then ran out of this momentum when they ran into SCU in the form of Scorpio Sky and Frankie Kazarian. And in short, he challenges Evil Uno and Stu Grayson to one-on-one matches because he doesn't believe the Exalted One actually exists. He says, if he doesn't come out at the end of one of those matches, then he's just going to prove that he doesn't exist. And then it cuts out to a Dark Order logo with Dark Order sucks under it. It was pretty funny. This was very good. If anybody watches Being the Elite and has seen Christopher Daniels on Being the Elite, this is like a segment straight out of Being the Elite for Christopher Daniels. Christopher Daniels does some really, really funny stuff on Being the Elite. I'm a big fan. Last week he did a segment on BTE with Orange Cassidy that was just hilarious. Definitely worth the watch. But here he's challenging the Dark Order higher-ups, I guess you could call them, to one-on-one matches. The first match, I believe Stu Grayson and Christopher Daniels happened during the Dark taping, so we'll probably see that on Dark next week, and depending on how they do Dynamite next week, I would assume that is when we will see Christopher Daniels versus Evil Uno, because later on in the night they did announce that the Exalted One was going to be revealed next week, so we'll see how that goes. Of course, if the show even happens, we will see from there. Next up, we have Butcher, Blade, and MJF versus the Jurassic Express. This was a fun match. I thought it was a fun match. MJF right at the beginning is like scared of Luchasaurus, and he ends up backing himself into the Jurassic Express corner, and he's like pleading for Luchasaurus not to destroy him. But of course, Butcher and Blade come in from behind and chop block Luchasaurus's leg. Of course, Luchasaurus had that leg, that quad tear. It was a light tear, but of course he that caused him issues at the end of last year, and he's been working through it, of course. Has not been doing a ton of wrestling, and it looks like he is 100% healed up at this point because they went after that leg, though I don't remember which leg was actually injured. They believe they were working over his left leg, and for some reason I want to say it was his left leg that was really injured. And so they work that over, they tie him up in the ropes, they kick his thigh and all that stuff. MJF spray tan again. If you watched Revolution, he looked so funny with his horrible spray tan, and this week, same exact thing. His spray tan is very bad. It was rubbing off all over the canvas, so there's just splotches all over the canvas where his fake tan has been rubbing off. He probably needs to talk to the Bucks to find out what they use, because I don't see them rubbing off as much as MJF does. And Luchasaurus ends up getting triple teamed for a good hunk of the match. Like I said, they working over his leg. Jungle Boy gets a nice hot tag at one point, and he's been doing this new rebound clothesline I'm really digging. So when he gets whipped into the ropes, he ends up hitting the ropes chest first, and then kind of rebounding out and spinning around into sort of like a half discus clothesline type of deal. Just how like Moxley had his, still has his, that he kind of falls out between the top and middle rope and rebounds out that way. So this seems to be Jungle Boy's kind of set up into doing a similar rebound type of clothesline. Very cool. I saw him do it on AEW Dark the previous night as well. So it seems like he's added this kind of in a bit of a signature move, because I don't really see anybody else do this. Like I said, he runs face first and chest first into the rope, and then bounces off and spins around with the clothesline. So that might be something to watch out, that he does this kind of setup for it. Luchasaurus does a step dive at one point that he likes to do to the outside. Luchasaurus and Butcher have a really nice exchange. They're laying in these forearms. They do a couple shoulder blocks to each other as well. Of course, Bunny distracts the ref, and Blade takes out Jungle Boy. Wardlow takes out Luchasaurus, and then MJF submits Marco Stunt in the middle of the ring, and that is the end of that match. Decent match. I didn't really have a problem with it. And, of course, MJF has this kind of relationship with this other group, the Butcher Blade and the Bunny. And it seems that they will continue to be hired hands for MJF on top of Wardlow. So he has, 3 big guys to kind of stand behind him. And I'm guessing at some point we may have a turn of. Actually, I haven't even really thought about this. I just said it right now. I'm sure there's going to be a turn at some point, but is it going to be Wardlow or is it going to be Butcher Blade and Bunny who turn on MJF? I'm guessing we might have some sort of a storyline where MJF's money runs out, or he bounces a check or something, a payment to them somehow does not go through as planned, and that ends up turning into, hey, where's my money, bitch? And they take out MJF, or Wardlow does something like that. So we will see how that goes. Next up, we have a very interesting Darby Allin promo. It was filmed pretty much out in a field of some kind. It had a body bag with Sammy written on it. It also showed Darby Allin wearing a cutout picture of Jericho on his face, and then he shows, I thought it was all in black and white, I couldn't really tell. Somebody was in with a picture over their face as well inside the body bag. I'm guessing it was supposed to be Sammy. And they close up the body bag, and it gets dragged behind a truck across the field. And that was kind of it. If you guys haven't heard his interview that he did with Dave Meltzer and Brian Alvarez over at the Wrestling Observer, it was very good. He was talking about how, he makes all these videos himself. He submits them over to AEW, and they're like, yep, we'll play this, no problem. So all those videos that we've seen him, the bodies, the crowd surfing video that he did before his match with Jericho. He did the cue card videos. What other weird videos? He's, just the skate videos, and all that stuff. And then, of course, this video. So he is actually an aspiring filmmaker as well, and he would like to do that. And it's pretty cool that he can make his own stuff and it actually gets aired on national TV. He just makes all himself. Next up, we had a Britt Baker promo with Tony Schiavone up on the ramp like has been happening. Of course, Britt Baker is ragging on Utah that caffeine is a no-no, beer and alcohol is a no-no. Also makes some fat jokes, then makes some inbreeding jokes as well because they're in Salt Lake City. So she's making some Mormon jokes and then some inbreeding jokes because everybody looks like she said it looks like a family reunion. She says that's okay. You can still be whatever you want. You can be a janitor, you can be a dental assistant. And that she's here to be a role model and all that fun stuff. And then Big Swole comes out and she's pretty much says to Britt Baker, I just hear you listen and gabbing on and all you do is talk. And Britt Baker says that the only person in Big Swole's household that anybody cares about is your boyfriend. And Big Swole's like, I'm married, baby. And then Britt throws the coffee that she had brought out for Tony in Big Swole's face and then runs away. So for those who don't understand that, it's a little bit inside, but of course they have mentioned on AEW Dark that Big Swole is married to Cedric Alexander. So if you did not know, there you go. She is married to Cedric Alexander. And of course, Britt Baker, I believe everybody probably knows at this point, is going out with Adam Cole. So she's dating Adam Cole. So that was a great little shot with saying, I'm married, baby, kind of rubbing it in that, yeah, I'm married to Cedric Alexander. You're just dating Adam Cole, that type of deal. So it was a little inside, but they have mentioned both of their relationships on AEW at some point, acknowledging who their significant others are. So it wasn't completely out of the blue, but if you have not been paying attention, I believe it was just on AEW Dark where they showed, actually, for both. I'm pretty sure that Excalibur has actually said Adam Cole's name on Dynamite in reference to Britt Baker. I'm not sure if they've ever said Cedric Alexander on Dynamite, but I know there was a promo video of Big Swole, and there were pictures of her and their kid with Cedric Alexander, who is her husband. So that has definitely been established in AEW lore. But again, I think it was just on Dark. I don't think they've ever mentioned it on Dynamite, whereas I'm pretty sure they have mentioned Adam Cole being in a relationship with Britt Baker on Dynamite. And there was a picture of him in a Britt Baker promo package really early on, I think maybe the third week or so on AEW Dark. I remember it. So both Adam Cole and Cedric Alexander, they have had their pictures on AEW television, so that is pretty funny. Also, it's so weird having some of these people have their significant others in WWE who are in AEW, because of course you got Moxley and Renee Young as well, and I guess Renee was actually backstage at the pay-per-view, so nice to see. I don't know if there's any other split couples like that. Those are the three that I know of. Next up, we have Private Party and Joey Janela versus Death Triangle. Death Triangle, of course, is Pac, Pentagon, and Rey Fenix. So they are out for blood. They are going after the AEW locker room because they all feel disrespected and not getting the recognition they deserve. They're not getting the title matches they think they deserve and all that. Match was fine. It was fun in spots, but one thing, actually two things. Back to what I mentioned for when I was talking about AEW Dark. Can Isaiah Cassidy stop screaming like a little girl? It's so freaking annoying. Please stop doing that. And second, the silly string is the stupidest move ever, and it makes your opponent look like such a chump because the opponent is in there for like 10 minutes waiting for Isaiah Cassidy to... Was it Isaiah Cassidy? Yeah, Cassidy to come back into the ring and grab onto him to give him a DDT. It's like, oh, jeez. Just move out of the way. You know he's coming back. And it wasn't even at a point... So this happened on Pac, and it was like so early in the match. It's like, you haven't even worn down Pac enough for me to think that he's out of it. He's so out of it that he doesn't see this coming a mile away. This is the same thing with Nyla Rose doing the stupid knee drop across somebody tied up in the top rope. Just takes way too much time, makes the opponent look like a chump when they can easily... he has to step one step to the left or right, and he's out of harm's way. And it's so damn slow that it's like, oh man, if you can't get out of the way of a silly string, you got a huge problem because it's just such a slow move. Janela gets a hot tag at one point. He takes everybody down. Quinn hits a Rana on Phoenix. So they go for kind of like a gin and juice, but he does the Rana, and then Phoenix lands across Joey Janela's shoulders, and Joey Janela turns that into a Death Valley driver. So it was like a Rana into a Death Valley driver. It was a very cool move, but they only got a 2 count out of that. Of course, we have a bunch of dives because, you know, that's how these types of matches go. Janela hits a DVD on the apron to Pac. Oh, that looked devastating. And hits a elbow drop for a 2 count on Pac after he gets rolled back into the ring. Of course, Phoenix comes in and hits a cutter on Janela. They end up hitting the stomp pile driver, him and Pentagon, and then Pac hits Black Arrow to pick up the win. It was a pretty good match. It was a pretty fun match. A couple fun spots. This match did go way too long, though. I think Death Triangle should have been able to finish this team off in like 4 minutes, and it went like 13 minutes. So they could have definitely cut a lot of time off this match to make Death Triangle out to be way more vicious than they did. I mean, they stood in there with Private Party, who has been not built up as a huge threat at this point, and Joey Janela. So there's no reason Death Triangle should have to take 13 minutes to put away this team. Again, I'm going back on, I believe I talked about this last week, but if they do want to introduce another title, I think a trios at this point is probably the way to go, because we have so many teams that we can have. We got Butcher Blade and MJF. We got Butcher Blade, and you could put Wardlow in there if you wanted to. We got various 3-person combinations you can make of the Elite. So you can have the Bucks and Omega. You can have the Bucks and Cody. You can have, if Hangman Page eventually does get reintegrated into the Elite, and this they end up making up at some point, you can have Cody, Omega, and Hangman Page. You could have the Bucks and Page. So you have all those combinations right there. Of course, you have various Inner Circle that you can do. Of course, you have Santana and Ortiz as the team, and then you either add Hager or Sammy. Or then you can go Jericho, Sammy, and Hager. So there are a lot of... We have so many factions. We got Lucha Express, of course. We have Death Triangle here, and then now with Joey Janela kind of being buddy-buddy with Private Party, that could also be another triplet right there as well. So we have a lot of ways we could go if we went with the trios. I am not opposed to a trios, but trios do tend to not work very well. But I think AEW can probably pull it off, because they make tag team wrestling be very important. I mean, there was only one singles match on this show out of 5 matches. They were all tag matches, or there's 2 tag matches and 2 trios matches, 2 6-man tags. So that would be something to talk about there. After the match, of course, Phoenix throws Private Party back into the ring, and they throw on this like 3-person submission, which they are calling the Death Triangle. And then they, of course, beat down all 3 of them. And then Best Friends run down. Of course, Orange Cassidy is more like waltzing down. Pac and Orange Cassidy have a little stare down on the outside. Orange Cassidy rolls into the ring at that point, and they all go their separate ways. Lexi is in the back with Dustin. Dustin is pissed off with the Inner Circle going after his family. He says he's Adam Page's partner, whether he likes it or not. He's fixing to kick some Inner Circle ass and do some cowboy shit. And so it seems Dustin is going to be inserting himself into the match, whether Page wants to or not. They show Page... Again, I believe this might have been only for the fight feed. Page is doing some push-ups in the back, and then he starts doing some curls, but he's curling a keg. That was pretty funny. Then there are some entrants showed for Sean Spears, some partner applicants, if you will. Very similar to how we saw tryout videos for Tough Enough for many years at this point. Next up, we have Lucha Bros. Next week, we're going to have Lucha Bros versus Best Friends. We're going to have the Exalted One is supposedly going to be announced. We have the 6-man tag between Inner Circle and the Elite. I don't know the makeup of that, but the winner of that match is going to get the advantage in the Blood and Guts match. Of course, all depending if it actually takes place at this point. The rules for it is old school War Games rules. It's going to be 5 minutes to start with one-on-one, and then a new person alternating teams is going to be added every 2 minutes. Match officially starts after all 10 men are in the ring or in the cage, and the only way to win is by submission or surrender. So there are no pinfalls, DQs, or anything like that. The only way to win is the other team somebody has to submit, or the team surrenders. So that will be interesting. Next up, we have a Moxley interview with JR. It looks like they're in a nice lounge of a ski chalet or something, or just a really nice hotel. There's like a nice big fireplace behind them. And they say that Moxley isn't medically cleared. I'm assuming this is, of course, a storyline, but of course, with Moxley being a little more susceptible to infection, because he does have the MRSA infection. He has a staph infection that has been kind of been reoccurring in his elbow. His immune system might be a little suppressed, but of course he also has that giant gash over his eye as well. And that might be another reason why he's not traveling. Or I know he was traveling to the UK, I believe, for a show this weekend. I have not seen details on that, if he's still going or not. Anyways, he says he's not feeling good, very good. He's a bit pissed off, but he says he's not going to go into it. He's not going to go into details about any of his injuries, which makes sense. He doesn't want to give up any information that he doesn't have to the Inner Circle. Says that it's been a game between him and the Inner Circle, but look who's winning. He's pointing to the belt, because it's all about the belt. Says he means what he says, and if Jericho wants the title back, he dares him to come and try to take it. Or what about Jake Hager? Step up into the batter's box, bitch. And then says that Hager hit him harder than anyone else has, but he's just another guy on the AEW roster to him. JR asks what's Moxley's plan for Blood and Guts. Moxley says, wrestling is blood and guts. I'm blood and guts. Wouldn't miss it for the world. But it seems that the Inner Circle has their hands full with them Elite Boys, and that Moxley is currently in their blind spot. And if Jericho is smart as he thinks he is, that is going to make him scared that Moxley is just in the blind spot at the moment while he's focusing on the Elite. And that is the end of that one. So interesting to see. We'll see how this goes, pending all these shows happening. Then we go into the final match of the evening, which is Chris Jericho and Sammy Guevara with the rest of the Inner Circle out at ringside versus Hangman Page and Dustin Rhodes. Of course, right before the match, Dustin and Hangman are arguing. It's like they haven't even talked about this. And Hangman is a bit pissed off about this. They do mention on commentary, but it wasn't explicitly kind of given away. I think they needed to kind of shoehorn this in to give it the commentary that it needed, or I guess the information that it needed to be, was that Hangman Page was looking to go it alone, very similar to how Darby Allin did last week. And he didn't actually have a mystery partner. And that is why there wasn't any other partner even hinted at other than Nick, who is not going to obviously be his partner anyways. So that is kind of what the commentary shoehorned in there as some sort of explanation about the whole thing. Anyways, Jericho, of course, ducks out of the match immediately and tags Sammy. He does this in almost every match at this point. He seems like he's going to go after whoever the first person is, and then he immediately runs to his corner and tags in somebody else. Hangman actually tags out, a little bit reluctant, but it seems like he is kind of has resigned himself to having to team with Dustin, so he might as well, whatever. Hangman actually gets tagged back in. They seem to be working pretty good as a tag team. Jericho grabs a beer from somebody in the front row, takes a sip, and goes to spit in Hangman's face, but Hangman punches him before he can. He grabs the beer himself while out of the hands of a falling Jericho and drinks it. Of course, then Sammy hits Hangman. This is a very... Hopefully that beer was a plant. I assume it was just how it worked. So that beer was not being passed around or being drank by a random person in the crowd. I'm hoping, especially with everything that's going on, you don't want to be inadvertently exposing yourself to something like that. And Hangman did not grab beers from people in the front row. So I believe this is a plant because the beer was completely full. Hopefully. I'm pretty sure it was a plant because it wouldn't have made that much. This spot looked planned. So I'm assuming that was a plant who did that. Yeah. Anyways, Inner Circle beats on Dustin while the ref is distracted on the outside, of course, because, that's what the Inner Circle does. They like to cheat. Dustin ends up getting his knees up for a Jericho lion salt so he can make the tag. Paige hits this crazy boot to Sammy. Sammy has eaten so many kicks to the face. Of course, the super kick that Matt Jackson gave him it was the tag team battle royale before Revolution. That super kick was amazing. And right here, this is like the greatest big running boot that I've ever seen anybody take. Man, Sammy has taken a few kicks straight to the face. Jericho counters a buckshot lariat attempt into a lion tamer. Dustin breaks up quickly. Sammy tags in. Hangman rolls out of the way of a Sammy shooting star press. Out on the outside, Jericho tosses Hangman like he's going to toss him back into the ring, but Hangman rebounds off the ropes and takes out Jericho on the outside, and then Dustin hits a destroyer in the middle of the ring on Sammy. Hangman hits a buckshot lariat on Sammy and picks up the pin. Of course, the Inner Circle is what they do. Jumps into the ring and beats on Dustin and Hangman. Kenny Omega comes down, broken hand and all. He gets taken out by the Judas effect from Jericho. Cody then comes down. He beats down the Inner Circle a little bit, but of course, then they turn the tides. He ends up eating a suplex on the ramp. Then Jericho hits him with a chair, and they're dragging Hangman up the ramp, and it looks like they're going to set up for a powerbomb, just like they did last week to Moxley. They're going to powerbomb him off the stage, but out of the tunnel comes Matt Jackson to make the save, so he breaks it up. He takes out all of the Inner Circle, and then Hangman and Matt Jackson are having a bit of a stare down, and Matt Jackson gives Hangman Page the middle finger, and then he turns away for a second just for Jericho to hit Matt in the face with a chair and then hit Hangman with a chair shot as well. They were both headshots, but they were both protected. The camera angle for Matt's chair shot was not very good, so you couldn't really tell. I played it back probably like 10 times. It looked like Matt did indeed get his hands up in front of his face, so he didn't actually get hit in the head with it. Same thing, Hangman's was completely safe. He got both of his arms up, so the chair hit him in the forearms. So he was perfectly fine there as well. The Inner Circle stands tall, giving the middle finger to everybody, and we go off the air there. So the biggest thing here is the Inner Circle definitely has their eyes set on the Elite. So what is going to happen now? We have Nick Jackson taken out. Storyline-wise, it looks like he won't be back next week at least. And will he be able to make it for Blood and Guts? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe Dustin will end up taking his place instead. Real life reason is Nick's wife is about to give birth at any moment, and he's been on baby watch for like 2 weeks now, so should be coming any moment now. So that's probably why he's going to be off TV for at least this coming week, but I assume for the next few weeks. And of course, if he has a new baby, I assume he might be staying off the road so he doesn't accidentally bring home anything to a newborn. That would be horrible if newborn got infected with the thing that's going around. That shall not be mentioned because, that's just how it goes. But yeah, I suspect Nick is going to be written off for a while, and maybe Dustin will take his place at Blood and Guts, assuming it takes place. Thanks for joining me, Lycans, right at the end of it here, but that's okay. And all in all, this is great. So we have Blood and Guts is finally getting set up. One thing that I really don't like about how this was set up is they announced the teams on like Monday, which made no sense because the feud between one, I don't think they should have announced the Blood and Guts match yet, and I definitely don't think they should have announced the teams, because the feud between the Inner Circle and the Elite was nowhere near the level to even remotely justify having a match like this. So announcing the match happening way ahead of time and then announcing the teams before there's even really a good reason to justify them being the teams in the match really makes no sense. I couldn't really figure out who the teams who the teams are going to be when they announced it. I figured it might be the Inner Circle versus some collective put together by Moxley, maybe, because he's had much more interaction with the Inner Circle and problems with the Inner Circle. Of course, you had Darby Allin that has problems with the Inner Circle, so it would have made way more sense for it to be like a Moxley-led collective to take on the Inner Circle. So who else do we have problems with the Inner Circle? So you have, I guess you could pull the Bucks in there because they've had issues with the Inner Circle recently as well. You could do something like that. So you could have Moxley, Darby Allin, and then maybe the Bucks as well, just to get revenge on Santana and Ortiz for what they've been doing over the weeks. You could maybe just pull in Cody and Dustin. Dustin would probably be the most likely. So, that actually pulling in Moxley, Darby Allin, and Dustin, and then two other people. I'm not sure who those would be, but that would make way more sense because Darby Allin has the issue with Sammy. Moxley, of course, has the issue with Jericho. Dustin has the issue with Jake Hager. So who's the last that have the biggest issues with Santana and Ortiz? Arguably, it would be the Bucks would be the most likely, but you could probably figure somebody else in there as well. So that would have made way more sense than just the Elite versus the Inner Circle, because there hadn't been a ton of interaction between the Elite and the Inner Circle up until this week. This week, the Inner Circle went hard against the Elite. They did a little bit. I mean, last week they were all focused on Moxley. So why would you even, I mean, there was the little bit where they did beat down Dustin and Cody, I believe, last week a little bit. But it didn't really come to the level of being focused on the Elite, especially what they did to Moxley last week. It would have made way more sense for Moxley to be involved in this. So, and then tonight is when they went hard. So it would have made way more sense if they didn't announce the match until, say, today. But, of course, who the hell knows if it's even going to happen. But anyway, I wouldn't even have announced the match until last night had finished. Because now it makes way more sense because the Inner Circle is going hard after the Elite. Then you announce the match. You don't announce the match before the explosion happens. I mean, that really makes absolutely no sense. So that I think was a miscue on their part, especially announcing the match at Revolution. It's like, there's not even a faction big enough. There aren't warring factions of 5-on-5 that would make sense at when Revolution happened. So this is just like the WWE saying, "Oh, the Hell in the Cell pay-per-view is coming up in 4 weeks. How do we shoehorn a match to fit the stipulation of an upcoming show?" Whereas it should be that should be a blow-off to a long-running feud, and this is going to be like a 3-week feud, assuming, well, it's going to be rescheduled because it's in Jersey. So if it's going to happen in an empty arena or somewhere else, we don't know. But even if the scheduling stayed exactly how it was already laid out, why would they book a match like this with like 2 weeks of build-up for a freaking, which is essentially a original War Games match that with no build? I mean, this is kind of a thing that you would think currently now, if the Elite and the Inner Circle are going at it now, we shouldn't be seeing this match until like maybe Double or Nothing. Maybe that's probably where it'd make the most sense. Do it at Double or Nothing. Because then we could have a 12-week build from Revolution to Double or Nothing. Or you could have Inner Circle being a thorn in the Elite side all the way up until September. I don't know what day All Out is, but I'm assuming it's either the last week or the last week of August or the first week of September. This should be a blow-off match after a long, at least 3 months, but 6 months would be way better to have Inner Circle be a thorn in the elite side, and that is what sets up this match. It makes completely no sense. They're going the way of creating a stipulation before a match needs it. That is a huge red flag for me and something I do not want to see them do again. I do not want them announcing a stipulation match before the need for the match to actually happen. Very bad move on their part. I think it's pushing the story ahead when they didn't need to. I don't know if they wanted to make some sort of... Obviously, they wanted to make some big show in Jersey, but they could have made it more of a super card instead of having this gimmick match go. You know, you could have had all the titles defended that night or something. I mean, that you could do that, or you could have at least 2 of the titles defended that night. It would have made way more sense to do that if you want to have some sort of like elevated card for being in such a big arena in New Jersey for the first time, because they sold it out super quick. So that would make way more sense if they did that, have a big card. But having this match, absolutely no sense. This shouldn't be happening until at least the end of May, like I said, at Double or Nothing. Really, this match shouldn't be happening until September. Realistically, they have so much time, and I think they're rushing this way too fast. Of course, now with the show being canceled or postponed, what they're going to be doing over the next few weeks, we will see. This question from Likens in the chat. If you are listening to this a podcast, you can head over to youtube.com, search for That's Wrestling, and make sure to subscribe to the channel. So he's asking thoughts on Death Triangle or Orange Cassidy. So I like Death Triangle. I dig the name. I believe it's a callback to an old Mexican trio at some point, but I don't know much of the history on that. But I believe it is a kind of a little bit of an homage to something like that. I dig the name. I think it's cool. As I said, the match that they had on Dynamite here went way too long. This team should be built up as complete killers. They should have laid waste to Private Party and Joey Janela in 4 minutes at the most. So that was a little bit disappointing. Going forward, I think they do need to play these guys off as killers. If they want to put them against trios that are essentially jobbers, which Private Party and Janela kind of are at this point, they should just destroy them. Next week we have Best Friends and Lucha Bros against each other, and of course that will mean Pac and Orange Cassidy will probably be at ringside for this match. So this is going to get interesting because obviously the two of them have a little bit of an issue here. How this is going to play out, I'm not sure. Best Friends have been played up as a higher mid-card act, so they seem to be able to hang a bit more. I believe, didn't Trent and Chucky T have one-on-one matches with Pentagon and Phoenix, some sort of combination of those guys? So, they're all relatively established as higher up in the card. Of course, there's going to be some shenanigans with OC and and Pac being at ringside for this next coming week. How this is going to play out, I am not sure. I'm not sure if they're going to continue on. Well, I'm sure they're going to continue on the Pac Orange Cassidy feud. That is a given at this point, given how they have been in each other's business for a few weeks now, and after the match at Revolution, that definitely did not bury anything. So that is definitely going to continue on. So the Death Triangle is obviously... Death Triangle has it out for the entire locker room, so we'll see how much destruction they cause, but are they going to have this kind of detour here when they feud the Best Friends for a while? That would be perfectly fine. And I think that's probably where they're going to go. They're probably going to be tied up with Best Friends for a little while, which is fine because we need to get the... As far as Lucha Bros, what are you going to do with them? You can't put them into the tag title scene at the moment because they've already had their match against... have they? I can't even remember. Yeah, they did. A few weeks before Revolution, then the Lucha Bros face Omega and Hangman for the tag titles. So they've already had their tag title shot. So they can't go after the tag titles for at least a little bit. So they need to have some sort of story to work with. I think Best Friends, perfectly fine. And this will be a fine detour for them. I don't know who else they can actually feud with at the moment. Best Friends are in there. Of course, then you could probably put together some sort of natural nightmares. You could have kind of... this would actually probably work if you had Cody, Dustin, and QT Marshall have a feud with the Death Triangle for a little bit just to occupy their time. I mean... QT is going to get destroyed. He's going to be eating all the pins, but I think those could actually make some really fun matches. I've loved some of QT's stuff where he manages to do this really sloppy dive or whatever, and it works out, and he's amazed by it happening. I've been a fan of a little bit of his comedy spots. It's really like subtle comedy spots. Big fan of him. Let's see... Lucha Bros, Butcher and Blade. Yeah, so you could have Death Triangle against Butcher, Blade, and MJF, or Butcher, Blade, and Wardlow. That could be an interesting thing. Man, that would be a massive team. Butcher, Blade, and Wardlow. Got some beasts right there. Then we have Trent is great, but Chuck is a joke. I like Chucky T. I don't know if you haven't watched him in New Japan. Chucky T is really good. I'm a big fan. Obviously, he's on the smaller side. When they were a tag team in New Japan, they competed in junior heavyweight. Trent wasn't as jacked as he is now. They had broken up when Chucky T's contract ran up, I believe, or Chucky T got injured. I don't know why they broke. I don't know the actual behind the scenes reason of why they broke up somewhere late 2018 or so, I believe. And Trent was going to go on his own way as a singles heavyweight. That's what happened when they broke up their team. And I'm not really sure everything that went down on that, because obviously both of their contracts came up not long after that. But Chucky T by himself, he's great. Chuck is the invisible hand grenade. Yeah, like he is really good. Obviously they like Trent as a singles, and I think Trent is going to eventually break out as a singles. Chucky T is great. He can do some fun cruiserweight matches, or whatever you want to call them, junior heavyweight matches, or on the smaller side matches. He can have really fun matches. So he's great. I think there's really nothing wrong with him. And then Pac versus Wardlow. Yeah, that could definitely be a barn burner, as mentioned by Likens in the chat here. Pac versus Wardlow. Very interesting. Obviously, it's probably not going to happen anytime soon because they are both heels. So a heel match would be very strange. I think Wardlow probably has to turn on MJF before that happens. And Wardlow has to turn face, but I don't, of course, who the hell knows when that might even happen. Cornette hates Chuck, but loves Trent. Yeah, well, it's Cornette. Cornette hates everybody, so. But not a big deal. So I believe that is all I have this evening. Thanks for listening and watching. Like I said, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can pick this up as a podcast, all your favorite podcast apps. If you're listening to this on podcast, head over to YouTube. You can follow the link in the show notes. Subscribe to the That's Wrestling YouTube channel because I record all of these live. So you can come into the chat room, and if you have any comments or anything in the middle of the show or any questions, I can answer those and talk about whatever topic happens to come up during those chats. So if you subscribe, hit the bell notification, and as soon as I schedule a stream, it will let you know, and then it will also let you know as soon as I go live. So that is the best way. I usually do AEW Dynamite reviews at 8 o'clock on Thursday, the following day. Today I did it at 7. But if you hit that bell notification, you'll get notified as soon as I schedule it, which is usually an hour maybe beforehand, or the night before I may schedule it, so you guys know ahead of time exactly what time I'll be doing it. New Japan, since New Japan has been canceled since the beginning of March, I am still behind. I am sorry. I need to catch up on New Beginnings and get all the way caught up until the cancellation started. And of course, New Japan is canceled through the end of the month anyway. So really, I just have the New Beginning shows that I need to catch up on, and then I'll be up to date. But we'll see. Right now, there's the current next scheduled show for New Japan, I believe, is the 31st, but it's likely that's going to get canceled as well. Everybody, I believe a couple of the Japanese promotions have been canceling their shows out into April. So we'll see if New Japan follows suit after today's recent stuff. That was up for, a couple days ago is when New Japan canceled the rest of the month. So we'll see how that goes. But yes, I definitely need to get caught up on New Japan. But other than that, if you'd like to be a co-host on this show, be sure to send me an email, eric@thatswrestling.com. If you can't find this as a podcast, you can also head over to thatswrestling.com to get the RSS feed. And other than that, I think that is it. So we will see how it goes over the next week. And if any big news comes out, I'll probably put out a small kind of alert episode, if it's going to be 10 or 20 minutes, something like that, as soon as kind of the massive news comes out, and you can look forward to that in the next couple days probably. I'll try to release whatever I know as soon as I know it. So that's it for this week. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. Review the show, comments, questions, feedback, shoot them to eric@thatswrestling.com, kind of a mailbag, and I will see you next time on That's Wrestling. See you guys.